So, I was gonna do this thing where I dressed up in a long coat and then this whole thing where like, "Invest me, you scurvy scallywags, 'tis I, Captain Nearsighted." And I would more or less just go through a bunch of costumes along the way, but have you seen what you can be charged with if you commit any kind of copyright infringement? I would be better off committing war crimes than that. Instead, here's a picture of a cat. You want to go Kaizoku Sentai Rambling? Hey there, welcome to another Toku Ramblings. Our first Sentai series we're talking about, the Kaizoku Sentai Gokaigers, the Sentai's 35th team. So, technically, the 35th anniversary of Sentai was actually the last year's team Gokaigers, but Sentai celebrates its things with teams rather than by years. And last Gokaiger was the 35th team, wanting to more or less take the style that was done by Kamen Rider Decade by giving its main heroes the ability to transform in the past 35 team suits and costumes. Like, you can consider that they're pirating them. Oh my god, I cannot believe I made that joke. Everyone has literally made that joke. Even they have made that joke too. Why am I so... So Gokaiger initially starts with a flashback to the Earth's biggest crisis when an alien fleet comes to, well, you know, destroy the world, which sees all 34 previous teams joining forces to combat the intergalactic threat. But unfortunately, there are more soldiers on foot, and they have ships. They have large ships that can blow stuff up. So, in a last-ditch effort, the teams combine their powers and defeat the Zodiac at the expense of losing their powers. Whereas, sometime later, it's never given exactly, but I'm just gonna guess a few months. Sentai is sometimes weird about its time. The Zodiac have more or less pushed their balls back out and then return to more or less try. Again, unfortunately, at the same time, another group arrives on the planet. A small group of pirates who have come in search of the greatest treasure in the universe that just so happens to be on Earth because. And this is the 35th team, the Gokaigers, who not only can have their own unique swords, but can transform into 34 teams. They are Captain Marvelous, the captain of the ship, and a former member of the Red Pirates, who were looking for the greatest treasure in the universe before an incident drove them apart. Is Gokai Red, Joe Gibcan, a former soldier of the Zodiac, who rebelled in order to kill children, and was saved by Marvelous is Gokai Blue, and the second in command, Luca Milfi. Milfi, is that it? Is that it? Did I spell that right? God. Yeah. A thief who was stealing from the Zodiac to buy a planet for some friends as Gokai Yellow, and the group's lookout and primary action girl. Dong Gear is the ship's mechanic and cook, and Gokai Green being the smart one in the group and kind of a coward. Ahim De Famil, the princess of a destroyed planet who joins up the team to inspire her people, is Gokai Pink, and running out the initial team is their pet mascot Navi, who was also part of the Red Pirates and serves the team hints on how to find the greatest treasure in the universe. Of course, with a lot of modern Sentais, they do get a sixth hero, Gayakari, a Sentai fanboy who nearly lost his life in the first trying to save a little girl and was visited by the 3-6 Rangers who have died before him and granted the ability to become Gokai Silver. Well, they don't have the intention to save the planet, even though they clearly do. Because the Zodiac keep getting in their way, they face off against War's Gills, the son of the Emperor and commander of the fleet, their technical officer Instar, and by extension Evil Genius, Damaris, a high-ranking soldier within the Zodiac who serves as the second commander ship, though actually he may be the actual commander due to Gil's less than competent plans. And finally, Barizog, a technically modified super soldier that serves as I'll just say Gil's bodyguard, who reminds you a bit too much of a former friend. But it's all alongside that, there's also Marvel's former crewmate Bosco Tajalakia and his partner, an alien by the name of Sally, who also had their eyes set on the greatest treasure of the universe. So, the show's plot is fairly simplistic. It primarily takes a backseat to the many tribute episodes that it has over its 50 episodes runs. Generally, Navi gives a hint to the next greater power they need for the treasure, and they go out to find the person who would help them find. That's not to say that there aren't episodes that are focused on the team themselves, but they're fewer and far between, with the exception of Marvelous and Joe, and to an exception, each of the team kind of gets a focus episode that's not included with a tribute arc, and then an episode that explores their past. Well, a two-parter with Don's case. This was sort of more or less not the original intention. Gokaiger's original plan was that major cameos would be for the big power-ups, like the new Zord modifications they would get. And this would generally be from the past 4 teams and some of the more notable teams from the franchise's past. But then the 2011 Tohoku earthquakes happened, and it's a lot more past Sentai actors appearing, wanting to come back and giving more tribute episodes. Though if you are more or less a fan of the Showa era, there's really very little representation for your side. Onto characters like Marvelous is everything a great leader should be. He's confident, charismatic, strong, and intelligent, and always ready for adventure. He also really has the most story focus because of his tie with the initial hunt for the greatest treasure, since he's been doing it longer than the rest of them. And that ties in with Bosco because of his betrayal and more or less despite his rather uncaring attitude to what is going on outside the treasure, he does still care about his teammates and is willing to do the right thing when it comes down to it, and let's follow rules when it needs to be done. And the actor just brings it all together, and just so I don't sound like a broken record for this entire cast, the main 6 is really great. Their chemistry is amazing. They bounce off one another well, and every actor gives their character a lot of life. What's coming to life is the confident leader attack. Well, and again, he is one of the 2 Rangers who gets a major overarching story that does see its conclusion and more or less shows its characterization. Joe himself also does a really amazing job in his role as the stoic calm compared to the more energetic and open Morales. He's also the only other Ranger to get something of a story arc that lasts more than in a singular episode, dealing with Bari Resort, since they both were friends before the series, and more or less now slave of more or less skills. And a lot of episodes up until the finale has him trying to find a way to get the free back into him and realizing that more or less the only way he's likely going to free him is by destroying him. It gives more sides to who Joe is, other than more or less just that's what we're given initially. Of the main 6, I would probably say Luca was my favorite. She was the one I had the most fun. But she was the one who best embodied Pirate in this series. Greedy, no nonsense, and she wanted what she wanted. And the big thing that kind of holds her back from being like there is something that kind of more or less goes to the rest of the free, because of the amount of tributes and by extension fan service the series gets. They're kind of more or less lacking in kind of full development. We get one and more or less why she joined the Gokaigers and stuff, but again, it's only a singular backstory episode So, and of course, like the focus episodes they get throughout. That Don's probably the most interesting of the crew. He's not the bravest nor fighter, opting for probably the most unique fighting style that's always a joy to watch through. Now, he does more, but he does show that he is the smart person and the mechanic, and we're shown that if it wasn't for him, this ship was probably not going to last that much longer. And he more or less gets his MVP moments, whether it's making their super cannon to more or less deal with a much harder to kill monster, or in his focus episode, where more or less he has to fight against the entire fleet of mooks to save us from being executed right then. There. Yeah, he didn't think far beyond Get Marvelous for free, but considering he tried to avoid fighting, it shows he knows how to fight. He might be the one who doesn't get might be the least developed comparison with the other two. She more or less wanted to join the team because and in her backstory episode, it's shown that she struggles a bit initially, but it is shown why she's still around. Now, she is the heart, the thing that keeps this group together. From falling apart when it could have easily. This team could have not come together, and more less when she's faced with the person who did destroy her planet, that she is willing to face it alone, but her other teammates are willing to come and help her. She also probably has one of my favorite singular episodes in Tell Me the Way, where she tries to swindle her own friends after hearing someone's sob story, which is honestly fine. Guy was initially concerned. Then I was concerned this was going to be Shunpei all. That more or less he was going to be really loud, obnoxious, and more or less speak too much. And he is kind of annoying at certain moments for his thing. But he knows when to tone it down and be actually helpful to the group with his knowledge of scenes, and he can come off as funny. Also, with his addition, the team nicely balances out between the more anti-hero Rangers and less more straight hero. Though Don kind of borders because he's a coward and less prefers not fighting. Navi is fine. All in all, the main cast is really great. I wish the other half would have gotten a lot more development than they actually did, but considering what this series' biggest issue and its biggest strength is its fan service. It more or less delves into Sentai's nearly 35-year history for a whole lot of things. Nearly every team has some kind of representation here, with some exceptions though that considering. But at the same time, it does more or less struggle with certain things, and that's sort of seen with the villains. They're not terrible, but they're not great. Right, Lord Gills is your standard villain, narcissistic, arrogant, yet hot-headed, temperamental, and kind of funny. Whatever things don't go his way, and that is literally every time, he starts throwing a temper tantrum that this group of pirates who shouldn't be causing too much problems are causing problems. As if it's unbelievable considering how often it ends up happening. And that's his entire... He gets 9, and that's literally every episode. He gets some kind of idea, whether it's good or bad. It sends an action commander to go do it. It ends up failing. He starts getting emotional and blaming everyone but himself. And that's pretty much it. They tried to give him some more depth near the end of his run as being smarter than he appears and having some serious daddy. issues, but he's killed almost immediately after he arrives. I don't know, considering that revelation, I thought it would have been interesting to see him around for a little bit longer. The Morris is also find his experience makes him more questionable to the prince's certain actions, but he can't do much because the prince is, for lack of a better term, kind of near. Like the prince, his issue is that he doesn't get much to do until his final major episode, where again he's killed off. And that's sort of the thing. And so is the person who is their evil genius who grows monsters and has an episode and has a thing in their tribute, in the Car Ranger tribute episode. So where she falls in love with the Red Ranger, which is actually a kind of neat nod to that show, and that's really but for the most part, she is primarily the person who enlarges monsters, and that's kind of it. Kaizoku's probably the most interesting one here because of his relationship with Joe, but he doesn't really remember much of it, then spends most of his time on the ship with few exceptions until, well, you know what it is, well, let's say it again, his last episode. There is like one major saving grace in this line of villains, not counting the Emperor, who barely counts the villain. He shows up and more or less just takes his son's position after he dies, and that is Bosco. He is the best villain in this series. Not only more or less in that he is actively trying to get it, but he also is able to match the Rangers innately in power because of his trumpet, which allows him to summon 6 Rangers since he took those, and he is an active threat trying Rangers and more or less get things. And it's shown that he is conniving and which is best shown in this opening episode, where more or less when the Rangers think they've taken down his Ranger keys, he more or less reveals that he does have more and is able to beat down the tired Rangers. Does get stolen? I still have the extra Ranger keys, you fools! And more or less even and hides his true form. And add on to that the interesting relationship he has with Sally, which innately seems like as he does more less step in to stop an attack from hurting her, maybe thinking like he does have this sort of caring nature for the people around him, only to be a bit of a bait and switch later when more less, well, he just sacrifices her to more or less get the Ranger's treasure. And that's when he is more let's argue most of the plans he comes up with are arguably far more interesting than some of the things the main villains come up with. And there's a good reason why when the next series came up, they essentially just redid this character with a different actor. Oh yeah, the Emperor actor. Same problem as the main villains, not enough time and I'm more or less having arguably one of the most flashy finishes this franchise has ever seen, which sees the Rangers go through every suit of both some powered up forms and being blasted point blank in the chest with the bazooka before he's finally taken down. I'll give credit, he doesn't have much personality, but that's a pretty baller way to go. Aesthetically speaking, I do like the main Gokaiger suits. The gold nicely accents the right places, and the simple combination of a red jacket and black undersuit gives them a nice appeal. Considering that more or less they be changing a lot, it is a good idea. I also like the detail that more or less silver, instead of a captain's hat, has a bandana and sunglasses look of, like, say, you know, a newer recruiting member. But I think it really looks nice. Not too fond of his gold mode form, which is really cheap. So problem 1, it premieres too early. It happens 2 episodes after his introduction and more or less feels like sort of a cop-out. 2, it's late. See, I think the main issue I have is just the fact that it decides to just slap the faces of all previous 6 Rangers right on the torso. It just feels like no one had an idea how to do it. I probably would have preferred if it was like, he gained like a captain's, had more or less some gold and some gold trimmings, some new gold in place, like say maybe his parents were gold and the suit became the black suit undersuit became silver. I think that would have looked nice, but it's probably the least likable design thing. Gokaiger is odd. I like how it looks. It fits the theme of the pirate. It's not too blocky, and it isn't instantly pleasing. I just kind of wish if it was just a singular, like, large mecha, kind of like harkening back to the early days rather than just the 5 pieces, because, yes, the individual mechs never really do much, but oh boy, did they not do much in this. See, isn't they're not that unique. We have a car, submarine, and I can't even remember some of them because they're that kind of forgettable. Whenever a greater power does grant him like a new Zord modification, I do think it looks actually really solid. Yeah, it looks a little bit kit-bashed, but it does make sense in this series, even though the combination between it and Gojujin is basically just taking the arms from one and putting it on the others, and the Ultra configuration is just 3 of the mechs combined and so on. And Gojujin looks nice, incorporating the anchor theme and referencing the 3 powers it makes up in its base ship form, its T-Rex form, and then finally its Zord form. I think this does fit really well with the character. And the Zodiac designs are also really solid. Their intergalactic nature allows for varied designs and some neat little references to past series, even if they're not that. And musically, I feel like a lot of tracks fit with the kind of high-tempo, epic feel that let's get one mode for adventures, and it's not the most real, and sometimes music does kind of blend into the background unless it's something interesting, but the soundtrack is really good. Gokaiger overall does have a lot of extremely great, one-offs, and I do think it helps from its episodic nature. It allows people to just jump in wherever. Some personal favorites, the one where him gets kidnapped but ends up more or less becoming the kidnapper to give the money is one of the funnier episodes of the season. The Jetman tribute, Wings Are Eternal, and the body swap is also really nice, seeing the 2 actors there's having to more or less spread their thing chops, having to be the other person. About the one episode I'm probably not the fondest of is the one that introduces the gold power-up, because it's just the generic. The new guy makes the old person feel jealous because he's taking all the things he used to do, and of course they end up being the only people who are capable of stopping the monsters. But I guess the silver lining is it does show, creativity that wouldn't be much, that was, while not used much by Guy, is interesting. Gokaiger is very much the purest definition of fan service, but it's the kind of loving fan service, and that you can tell that the creators more or less cared and cherished the history that came before it. They honored it. They knew what needed to be seen with. They knew what needed to be treated with respect, which compared to say Megaforce, which spent on and just shoved in hey, here's this thing from your past. Remember this? Remember this from your past? It's cool, right? Well, here it is again for you. And a decade, which did nothing really great anniversary. So it's actually kind of unfair that Gokaiger sort of wins by default and that it's actually good comparatively to it. Yeah, people can more or less say that it is just fan service, and that's a weakness. It's fan service that covers up a rather minuscule plot and lack of character enjoyments, but it's just pure enjoyment. And hey, the characters have great dynamic, the action is good for the most part, with the swapping of suits for interesting things, and some of the recurring characters have some really solid cameos. I will say this is actually a decent place to start. You're probably gonna miss a good chunk of cameo, all things considered, but it does more or less give you a decent look back at more or less everything Sentai has done, and itself is an enjoyable series that I can recommend as a first or more or less something to watch if you've watched a whole bunch of Sentai beforehand. It's an enjoyable watch and currently has the definitive example of best Toku anniversary I've watched, though considering other series that more or less that by reaching very high while others reach very low. So yeah, that's that. As always, channel, videos, comments, ring bell, subscribe. See you later.